So in this video for Hatshepsut, we'll be looking again at foreign policy and at trade, but we won't be focusing on the punt expedition. We've looked at that in another video. This video will be looking at the other examples of trade that we have and the other specific evidence we have for trade during Hatshepsut's time period. And this will demonstrate to the market that we don't have a very narrow understanding of trade by only looking at punt. It will show the market that we have a very comprehensive understanding of trade, and we have a variety of examples of evidence to draw from to be able to support that. In a response on foreign policy, we would look at probably the military achievements first and look at those debates, and then we'd start on trade. And we'd probably start with these other examples first to provide a holistic understanding of trade before, with some examples of evidence, before we move down the path of looking at punt specifically. So that really would demonstrate to the market that we really have a really thorough understanding of Hatshepsut's achievements during her time period. So a really good way to start any explanation of trade is by using this quote here from Donald Redford, who says that Hatshepsut was not blind to the need of bolstering Egypt's economy, which highlights one of the main reasons why she engaged in trade to boost Egypt's economy. We can also tie that in with the New Kingdom concept of maintaining art through trading practices. So in her inscriptions, Hatshepsut provides us with a few different examples of places where she traded with, but she's vague in some of these inscriptions. So just generally in some inscriptions, she mentions at Deir el-Bahari, she mentions places like the African lands, which you can see highlighted there in the red in that oblong. Again, quite vague, but tells us that she trades with the African lands. This map, incidentally, is from 1400 BC, so it's about 50 years too late, but it gives us a good indication of roughly where Hatshepsut would have been trading during her time period. We see the Levant, so up in the Arabian, up there in the Arabian area, bordering onto the Mediterranean. We know that she tells us she traded with the people of the Levant, which is where they're from. And finally, the islands of the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, so modern day Cyprus and Greece there, we think she may have traded with. She also tells us in an inscription at the Speos Adamitos temple here, which is a temple to Pakhet, which she was engaged in building. She tells us that she traded with Rocha West in modern day, or in the Sinai area, EU, which we don't know where that is at all, and of course Punt. So that's another really good example of specific areas that she traded with. We also have examples from Thuti, who was one of Hatshepsut's key officials, and he recorded a lot of what Hatshepsut brought back from her trading expeditions. In fact, he's depicted in the punt scenes at Deir el-Bahari, recording the goods as they come off the ships when they're unloaded after the punt expedition. And we can see in other inscriptions of his, not the punt inscription, but in other inscriptions, he also provides us evidence of Hatshepsut bringing back gold, silver, copper, ebony, and precious stones. So that's good supporting evidence to add to our evidence from the punt inscriptions. It also tells us some of the areas that these were brought back from, so Nubia, tropical Africa, the Sinai, and Lebanon. And finally, we have evidence from inscriptions at Wadi Maghara and Serabit el-Kadim. So these inscriptions are both on that Sinai Peninsula, which we can see there well, here it is, down roughly in this area here. And they tell us that Hatshepsut brought back turquoise and copper and mined copper as well during that time period. So we need to have a really good understanding of some of these specific examples of trade to really show the market that we don't just know about punt, we know about a whole heap of other stuff as well, which is equally as important.